Welcome to the Miller Waste Systems Safety Standards for Waste Disposal Sites in-house training program. This program is all about safety in our waste facilities. We're going to go over a lot of measures and procedures that you need to know in order to ensure that you can work safe no matter what job you're doing. We're going to talk about some legislation, specifically the Ontario Environmental Protection Act and Regulation 347. We'll go through the standards for waste disposal sites, the things that the law says we need to do in order to ensure that we are operating our sites in a safe manner. We'll talk about some health and safety concerns that you may have and how to go about ensuring those concerns can be addressed or controlled. By the end of this program, you're going to be able to prove that you're trained, because you're going to know how you can do your job, any job in a waste facility, in a safe manner. Why are we here? Waste facilities have numerous hazards. Workers need to be aware of these hazards and understand how to control them to create a safe workspace, a safe work environment. We're going to show you a movie that was made by Caterpillar, the company that supplies the majority of our heavy mobile equipment. The movie's probably 20 years old, but it's a great example of the things that we can do in our waste facilities in order to ensure that we have a very safe work culture. It's important that you understand the measures and procedures that are put in place and how they work to protect you at all times.
Landfills and transfer stations are busy, harsh environments where the stress of meeting production quota can produce an unpredictable amount of machines and foot traffic. Working in waste could be one of the most challenging things you ever do. So how do you make sure you and your co-workers safely make it through a shift? By being committed to safety, working together, following rules, and most importantly, communicating. That can mean everything from a brief pre-shift meeting with your team, mapping out a plan for the day, to making eye contact with a machine operator while standing clear of any machines. Nothing is more important than staying safe while you work, and safety begins with you. The harsh environment of a landfill or transfer station is dictated by the unpredictable nature of waste. Instead of pushing, hauling, or moving dirt, operators are working with various waste types: municipal waste, construction and demolition debris, and all types of sludge. When working with waste, you'll find no two materials react alike. Some break, some flatten, and others become airborne, turning into dangerous projectiles. Navigating through waste is tough enough, but safety concerns don't end there. People and machines make for a lot of traffic in what's often a tight space. At any time, there could be a number of various machines working in the area. You also have to account for commercial truck traffic and anyone who pulls up in a pickup truck to dump waste. Then there are the people on the ground: operators, spotters, foremen, and truck drivers, each with their own jobs to do and different places to go. Many are under stress, working quickly to get the job done on time. The potential for accidents is great. Fortunately, by taking simple precautions, you have the power to prevent them. Safety on the job begins with knowing the safety elements in any operation, waste or otherwise. Those elements: human, machine, application, and weather. Once you know the most important safety elements, you can devote the appropriate attention to each one. Ask yourself, what is safety? Safety is a state of mind where you and your coworkers look out for the well-being of each other and the team. Safety is being aware, alert, and always ready for the unpredictable. Expect the unexpected. It's leaving for home the same way you arrived at work. Who's responsible for safety? We all are. Think first if you're ready to go to work. Think about the words, I'm safe. Are you ill? Are you on medication? What's your stress level? Have you had any alcohol? Are you fatigued? Have you eaten correctly? If your body is compromised by any of these factors, you're not ready to work safely. Now think if your machine is ready to work. Is it safe? Is there damage to the machine or a problem that could put you or others at risk during operation? Think about the job ahead of you. What's the application? Who are you working with? Are there any special circumstances, like changing weather conditions, an unusual amount of special waste being tipped, or a smaller work area for the day, leading to congested traffic? Operating safely is operating without surprises. As you are operating, be continually alert of your machine for different vibrations, smells, or any changes in its operations. Continually scan the work area and your cab systems. Using all your senses while operating makes you a safer worker. Communication is the most important part of the job while working at a landfill or transfer station. Having a working plan for the job site means nothing if you don't communicate the plan to others. Everyone, supervisors, foremen, operators, and spotters, should discuss the plan at the beginning and end of every shift, as well as during breaks and machine changes. Where are people working? Where will members of the public be directed to dump waste? If you're handing off the machine, tell the next operator how the machine is handling. Or if no one tells you, make it a point to ask the previous operator how the machine has been running. As you operate the machine, maintain communication with those around you. Use eye contact as well as hand and horn signals, and be sure your signals are acknowledged. When you work together, there's a better chance you'll avoid accidents and injuries. Communication continues through the course of your workday. When you're aware of your environment and in contact with your team, you can alert each other of potential hazards, whether they are other machines, people, or waste-related products. It's important to know and understand your company's safety rules. One rule you must always follow to stay safe is wearing the appropriate personal protective equipment, or PPE, including a hard hat, safety glasses, reflective vest, gloves, the proper shoes or boots, and any other company-required PPE. For example, without that vest, you and your clothes might easily blend into the environment you're working in, making it difficult for a machine operator to see you. Landfills and transfer stations take a heavy toll on machines. To maintain safe operating equipment, perform walk-around inspections before and after your shift, and anytime you're off the machine. Look at the machine. Pull any debris from the frame. Check fluid levels. Wipe mirrors and windows, as well as the inside of the cab, because good visibility and operating in a clean environment are important. After you're sure you have a safe machine, be sure you have a safe work area inside the cab. Fasten your seatbelt and prepare yourself mentally for the job you are about to perform. Chances are you'll be working in the machine most of the day. Are you comfortable? Check all controls, systems, alarms, and gauges to make sure they're working. And be sure you understand the symbols and warnings. Also, A safe machine is one that's allowed to warm up properly. Caterpillar suggests a minimum of 5 minutes for warm-up and cool-down. This adds to the life of the engine and components. If you notice any problems during the walk-around, record and report them to a supervisor immediately. It's everyone's responsibility to prevent injuries on the job. Many companies have a lockout-tagout rule for unsafe machines. This means an operator, after recognizing the safety of a machine has been compromised, will lock the cab and tag the machine as unsafe to operate. Use the lockout-tagout procedure deemed appropriate at your work site. When you're ready to begin operating, there are a few basic guidelines that will help you work safely. First, read and understand the safety and operating information in the Machine Operation and Maintenance Manual before you operate any machine or work tool. Other tips. Always look behind you before you move in reverse. Keep plenty of space between your machine and vehicles or people on the ground. Know the distance between your machine and others. Know how fast others are traveling. Be aware of the swing radius of other machines. If possible, avoid operating your machine in other people's blind spots. Be aware of changing conditions like fog, rain, and dust. Be aware of your ground speed and stopping distance. It can vary depending on weather conditions and the machine you're operating. In transfer stations and close working areas, being aware of your working environment also means knowing your swing radius on excavators and stopping distance for wheel loaders, as well as noticing floor conditions and variances in lighting. And watch the materials you're about to run over. Some waste shatters or splatters, or can fly several hundred feet. Awareness is recognizing potential projectiles and avoiding them. When you're conscious of the environment around you and communicating a plan with coworkers, you're putting safety first. When you're ready to leave the cab, keep your machine from moving. Always ground buckets and blades, and set your machine's parking brake before you leave the seat. How you get on and off a machine is just as important as how you operate it. Make sure the machine is on a level surface. When mounting and dismounting, face the machine. Keep 3 points of contact. Look before you step down and never jump off the machine. The waste you're working in is often slick and uneven. Jumping off a machine doesn't give you time to look for potential hazards. You'll rarely find downtime at a landfill or transfer station because of time and production demands. Machines of all shapes and sizes are busy compacting, stockpiling, loading, hauling, and dumping waste. That means you have to deal with machines of different heights and mirror levels, traveling at different speeds. Plus, there are people working at ground level around the site. Visibility and awareness are vital. Remember to turn on your machine's lights so you can see and be seen. Watch for blind spots. There may be someone standing in yours. When you're reversing up a hill, for example, you may not see someone or something directly behind you. To avoid accidents, be aware and alert. It's also your responsibility to stay out of other people's blind spots. Making eye contact is one way to do that. Eye contact can be made face-to-face or using your mirrors. Make eye contact when you're passing someone to make your intentions known. Often, adding a hand motion to indicate your direction is helpful. If you're backing into a work area, again, avoid other people's blind spots. Using site-specific hand or horn signals can also increase visibility. When you're on the ground, make eye contact with operators. If you want to talk to one, first try communicating via radio. When that's not possible, get the operator's attention while standing clear of any machines. Add a hand signal to get the operator's attention. Receive acknowledgement from the operator before approaching the stopped machine. Bottom line, assume the machine operator has not seen you until an acknowledgement has been made. Always remember, communicate verbally and visually with your teammates. And never climb or jump on a moving machine or walk behind a moving machine. Landfills and transfer stations are busy, harsh environments filled with hazards in the form of people, machines, and waste. Navigating around each and every one of them takes a plan and constant communication, verbal, audible, and physical communication. Safety starts with you. It's up to you to perform daily pre- and post-trip walk-around inspections on your machine. It's up to you to know your machine's capabilities and properly warm it up or cool it down. Setting the parking brake, grounding attachments, wearing personal protective equipment, they're all your personal responsibilities. There is a lot to remember. There are a lot of responsibilities. Make a personal commitment to safety and a commitment to your team. Work together to create a safe environment.
How do you work safe? That's what you need to know, right? Understanding the hazards of working around moving equipment, the hazards of operating the moving equipment, hazards of inspection, hazards of sorting through waste. All of these tasks have dangers that workers must protect themselves from. It's all about hazard control. JHAs. You may have already signed a few of these. They provide workers with important information on how to stay safe while working. They provide the information you need regarding the task you are doing, preventative measures that you can follow, potential accidents, things that could happen to you if you don't follow the directions. They will tell you specifically how to do a task in a safe manner. We also provide you with a lot of information in our training booklets. All of the information that you receive in these training booklets, in the JHAs, are designed to provide you with the things you need to know in order to do a job safely. Communication is so important. If there's something about your job that you don't understand, if you see something that you think is dangerous, or if you just don't know the right way to do a job, talk to your supervisor. Ask them the questions. Ask for help. If your supervisor doesn't know that you need help, then there's not much that they can do. But if they know that there's something in the job that you're not sure about, that there's something that you think is dangerous, they can help you. They can address the dangers. They can give you the information you need to work safely. It's a lot to take in, but if you can remember these things, if you can follow these directions, you will be working in a safe manner, always. This is security camera footage from one of our facilities in Newmarket. Watch the worker in the foreground. He's doing a load inspection, and the worker in the background operating a loader, loading a compactor. As the loader operator begins to back up here, he's going to go grab another bucket of waste to put into the compactor. As he's turning, he hits the worker, knocking him to the ground. Notice he doesn't even stop. He had no idea that he just hit that worker. He's just going to go grab another bucket of waste. Thankfully, our worker wasn't seriously injured. He was able to get up and walk out of the transfer station. Let's watch it again. The worker in the foreground, focused on what he's doing. He's inspecting the load, looking for things that aren't supposed to be there. The worker in the background, focused on what he's doing. He's operating a big, expensive piece of equipment, loading a compactor. The worker in the foreground, though, he has his back turned to the loader the entire time. The loader operator, he should have his head on a swivel, looking at where he's going. These two workers were doing a great job at paying attention to what was in front of them, what they were doing. What they weren't doing was paying attention to what their coworker was doing. Paying attention to your surroundings, maintaining eye contact and constant communication with your coworkers. Seriously, you always got to be doing it. This is from our Markham facility. Pay attention to the worker in the middle of the screen. He's doing a load inspection, just like the worker in the previous video was doing. The loader operator in the background, same thing. He's pushing waste onto a conveyor belt to load a compactor. It's nice and bright. There's lots of people around. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the worker doing the inspection, he's turned his back on the loader. The loader operator, he's focused on what he's doing. He needs to grab some more waste to throw into that compactor. Look what happens. The loader operator pushes that pile forward, trapping our worker between the loader and the pile. Now, thankfully, our supervisor saw it happen. He was able to signal the loader operator, have him stop, and they were able to get the worker out. The worker was not seriously injured. Again, we got off really lucky. But this is just another example of how important it is that not only we look after our own safety and pay attention to what we are doing, but we work together as a team to make sure that we're all safe while we're performing our job. Those basic fundamentals, knowing the hazards of the job, communicating with your supervisor and coworkers, remember what we've trained you. Don't take safety for granted. This will go a long way to keeping you safe while you work. Okay, let's talk about some law, specifically Regulation 347. Waste management. That means the collection of waste, the transportation of waste, the disposal of waste, the things that Miller Waste Systems does, is governed by Part 5 of the Environmental Protection Act and by extensive regulations, including Regulation 347. The regulation of waste disposal sites and waste management systems are central to the legislative framework. The Environmental Protection Act and Regulation 347 have been designed to ensure that all forms of waste are effectively managed from the point of generation to where it is ultimately processed or disposed of. So in our case, we pick up the waste, we dump it at our facilities. The EPA and Reg 347 cover how we do that. In the past, Regulation 347 only required workers to be trained if they were handling liquid industrial waste or hazardous waste. But in 2013, solid and commercial waste were included. That's the type of waste that you're going to be dealing with. So we need to ensure that you're trained on how to handle that type of waste in a safe manner. So, what is Regulation 347? Well, it contains the laws to some of the following. Regulation 347 provides definitions of all types of waste, and it gives designations and exemptions to certain types of wastes. It provides guidelines to waste disposal sites and waste management systems, that's like our collection operations, and also standards for waste disposal sites, the things that we need to do at our sites to make sure that they're a safe place to work. There's something called generator registration, and there's also the management of asbestos waste. All of this information can be found in the regulation. If there's a guideline, definition, explanation, rule, law pertaining to any type of waste, it's covered under Regulation 347. At Miller Waste Systems, workers need to understand their responsibilities to stay in compliance with the rules of the EPA and Regulation 347. The regulation actually says that workers in the waste industry have to be trained to understand the regulation. Subsection 11 covers the standards for waste disposal sites under the Environmental Protection Act. So the Act states that no one may deposit waste on any land or in any building unless the land or building is a waste disposal site for which an environmental compliance approval, or ECA, has been issued. An ECA is a document issued by the Provincial Environmental Ministry that provides the rules, guidelines, and operating practices for all our facilities that receive, handle, transfer, and process waste. The ECA provides us with the authority to do what we do and also gives us guidelines on how to operate our waste facilities. There are numerous rules and requirements that need to be adhered to in order to operate a waste disposal site. To go through all of this legislation would take hours, but there are some things that directly impact workers on these sites. This is what we need you to know. The standards for waste disposal sites. At no time shall waste at the site be allowed to have any type of negative or adverse effect on the environment. This means we have to ensure we have no waste on site that affects the water table, air quality, or quality of life to persons or animals. We're going to go into some specific negative and adverse effects later in this training. Access to the site shall be provided so that vehicles can readily travel, no matter what weather conditions are, and shall be limited to such times as an attendant is on duty, and the site shall be restricted to use only by persons authorized to deposit wastes in the tipping area. It's a lot of words, but what it means, we need to ensure that the site has clear access, roads are plowed, vehicles have room to turn around, parking areas are available, and we need to have somebody on site to receive and inspect the waste that is being dumped to ensure it complies with our ECA. The waste disposal area or the entire site shall be enclosed to prevent entry by unauthorized persons, and access to the property shall be by roadway closed by a gate capable of being locked. So we need to make sure that the people on site are allowed on site. We can't have unauthorized persons on site. And we have to make sure that things like scavenging isn't permitted. We can't have people going through the garbage, picking out things that maybe they want to keep for themselves. And that includes the workers. All of the waste we receive must be properly stored, handled, and maintained. We got to make sure there's no leaks or spills of the waste, or damage to or deterioration of the container, or in some cases, the building which the waste is stored. Buildings and storage containers are to be leak-proof and covered when necessary to prevent odors, the falling or blowing of waste materials, or other emissions like dust or airborne material from the storage area. We're kind of starting to get into these adverse effects. Procedures shall be established, signs posted, and safeguards maintained for the prevention of accidents at the site, and waste disposal operations at the site shall be adequately and continually supervised. So this kind of goes back to the videos we watched earlier, the security camera footage. We have cameras on site to ensure that everybody is following the safe protocols that we've put in place. It's really important, and our ECA says that we need to do things like that. We need to make sure that people are following the rules and working safely. We need to have firefighting equipment and spill cleanup and containment equipment that is appropriate to the quantities and types of waste at or expected to be at the facility. And our workers need to be trained on how to safely use this equipment. We've talked about fire response in the past and spill response. We'll go through it in more detail in this training. Adequate and proper equipment shall be provided for the receiving, loading, and shipping of waste. And where required for accurate determination of input of all wastes by weight, scales shall be provided at the site or shall be readily available for use. Again, it's a lot of law and lawyer talk, but it basically means we need to have the proper equipment and we need to have scales so that we can measure our weights, the weights coming in, the weights going out. There are requirements for the equipment. Waste handling equipment must be capable of withstanding abrasion and corrosion from the waste we are receiving, handling, and shipping. It's why we need this heavy-duty equipment to move our waste around. Now, all of these measures and procedures are in place to prevent any adverse effects. We must ensure we don't allow anything we do to have an adverse effect on the environment. That's really, really key. Right out of the Environmental Protection Act and Regulation 347. They give us guidelines to ensure that we don't have these adverse effects. Nuisances and adverse effects. We're going to define what those are. As we've mentioned, the Act and regulations state that waste sites must prevent, control, eliminate, and mitigate any and all adverse effects on the environment. Adverse effects are defined in the Environmental Protection Act as impairment of the quality of the natural environment, so damage to anything that exists in the environment. Injury or damage to property, plant, or animal life. So again, damage to our property, that could be considered an adverse effect. Harm or material discomfort to any person. So, somebody gets injured at our site, adverse effect. An adverse effect on the health of any person. So somebody gets sick on our site, that's an adverse effect. Rendering any property or plant or animal life unfit for human use. So imagine if we were operating a facility and no other business or no animals could live in the area. Loss of enjoyment of normal use of property. So imagine again if our operations made it impossible for anybody to be in the area. Interference with the normal conduct of business. So if something that we're doing is actually preventing us from being able to do what the facility is meant to do. So that could be many, many different things. There's no real specifics. We have to think about this from a big picture point of view. What could cause these adverse effects? Well, we've talked about this a lot, but fires, motor vehicle or equipment collisions, large environmental spills that leave the site, enter a waterway like down a storm drain, ditch, or a maintenance hole cover, or other incidents that could hurt a person, an animal, plant life, or other environmental aspect. So all of these examples, all of these adverse effects, they can't be ignored. Our ECA says that we need to operate our facilities and we must follow the guidelines to prevent any adverse effect from occurring. There's also something called nuisance effects. Now, a nuisance effect is things like the odors coming from our facility or dust that we may make when we're doing our work, litter around the facility, noise, minor spills. Rats, mice, raccoons, animals that might like to find a nice place to live at one of our facilities. And vectors, disease-spreading organisms like mosquitoes, ticks, fleas. All nuisances and adverse effects are to be immediately controlled or eliminated as soon as possible. So how do we do that? Well, for your purposes, let your supervisor know. You discover one of these nuisances or adverse effects, notify your supervisor, notify somebody in the safety department. We will put the measures and procedures and controls in place to make sure that we are following what our ECA says, what the Regulation 347 says, and ultimately make sure that we're following the Environmental Protection Act. Okay, let's move on to some health and safety concerns that you may have while working at a waste facility. So what do you need to know? Well, you need to know that you can protect yourself by wearing your personal protective equipment. You need to know what waste would be considered hazardous or not acceptable at our facilities. Uh, you need to know how to deal with fires in our facilities. You need to know how to deal with environmental spills in our facilities. And we'll talk about asbestos management and control. We do not accept asbestos at our facilities, but we will go through some things that you need to know in order to make sure that we don't have any asbestos that comes or that you would have to handle at any time. All Miller Waste workers are required to wear all of the personal protective equipment needed to protect themselves while they are performing their work-related duties. You will be provided with all of the personal protective equipment that you need in order to work safely. You'll be given a hard hat. Hard hats are required in most areas when you're working inside one of our facilities. You need to wear safety boots. 8-inch green tag boots are recommended, boots that cover over your ankles, tied up. 6-inch are acceptable. What we cannot accept is safety shoes. Your boots need to cover your ankles. You'll be provided appropriate gloves to whatever job you're doing. They may be leather gloves or rubber gloves, vinyl. We also have some gloves that will protect you from sharp material. If there's a chance that you could get poked by something in the waste, we'll give you gloves that will provide effective protection against that. Be provided with safety glasses, CSA approved glasses. So your sunglasses, your eyeglasses, they are not acceptable. We will provide you with CSA approved safety glasses. If you do have a prescription, Miller does provide you with safety glasses that match your prescription. So just let your supervisor know that you have a prescription and we will ensure to get you the proper safety glasses to protect you. And then reflective clothing. You'll be given a uniform that will have reflective stripes on it. That is so that when you are working around equipment, you're working around a public drop-off area, let's say where vehicles are moving around or equipment is moving around, the reflective stripes on your clothing will give you more visibility to the drivers in the area. We must follow all municipal, provincial, and federal guidelines and our own ECA regarding the waste we collect, transport, handle, and ultimately dispose. Hazardous waste or waste that is not acceptable at the facility needs to be reported and refused so that it can be disposed of correctly. Don't allow someone to dump waste that we cannot accept. So what's not allowed? Well, it does depend site to site. Your supervisor can fill you in on more of the details to your site, but generally things like paint, cleaners, chemicals, computer equipment, batteries, certain types of household hazardous waste are not acceptable in our facilities. A lot of liquid waste is not acceptable in our facilities either. PPE does a good job of protecting you, but dangerous things like these unacceptable materials or hazardous materials can cause serious problems in our facilities and affect your health and safety. So we need to be diligent about what we allow to be dumped. Fires, fires inside of waste facilities can happen very quickly. You need to be prepared. And that's a picture of our Markham facility when we had a fire inside of it. Most fires start from flammable or incompatible materials, such as lithium-ion batteries, rechargeable batteries, batteries from cell phones, batteries in computers. When they get crushed, you've probably already seen a movie about this, but when they get crushed, they can start an immediate fire. Paints and varnishes, pool chemicals, flammable materials, motor oil, gasoline, antifreeze, all of these things, if they get mixed together under the right circumstances, they could start a fire inside our facility. If you do encounter a fire, you need to follow the safe job procedures that we have to control a fire, and those will be part of your training booklet. Notify your supervisor immediately if you discover a fire and follow their directions. We may need to evacuate the building. or perhaps the fire is small enough that we can control it using a fire extinguisher. Can you use a fire extinguisher to put out a fire? We've done some fire extinguisher training. You might have to make that call, or you and your supervisor will make that call. Maybe a fire hose is better. Using water on a fire is usually more effective than a fire extinguisher. If the building has fire hoses, or if we have hydrants on site where we can hook a hose up to, that might be the best way to fight the fire. If attempts to put out the fire were unsuccessful and there's no threat to your safety or the safety of others, what we may then try to do is actually physically remove the burning material from the building using one of our loaders. Preferably, this will be done in a controlled way, either by back dragging the material out of the building or by grabbing buckets and then spreading the material out in an open area, like out in the parking lot or the staging area for our trucks. Fires that are of this size will require the assistance of the local fire department. While material is being removed from the facility, we could control vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic. And then once the material is outside, then the fire department can go ahead and start just dumping water on the burning material. This is the most effective way to handle a garbage fire. Pull it out of the building, spread it out on the ground, see what's burning, and soak the hot material with water. This ensures the fire will be put out and that there will be no additional threat to the facility or, most importantly, the workers. Ultimately, your supervisor will make the final decision on whether we attempt to fight the fire or evacuate the building and call the fire department. And always remember, your safety, your fellow workers' safety, the safety of the public, these are our #1 concerns. Do not attempt to extinguish a fire if the safety of yourself or the public is in jeopardy. Spills. Facility and other waste-related spills can happen very quickly, and we need to be prepared. If you do have any type of spill in the facility, we have a safe job procedure that you can follow. If it's a hydraulic, fuel, coolant, or other mechanically related spill, so a spill from a piece of our equipment, we'll shut the unit off immediately. And then, if possible, once the unit is off, shut off the supply valve. Supply valves are usually located at the bottom of a tank. So there's a couple of different types of spills. A minor spill is a spill that's less than 100 liters and does not have an adverse effect to the environment. And we talked about adverse effects already. A major spill is a spill of more than 100 liters or any type of spill, no matter what the amount is, that could create an adverse effect to the environment. So like it gets into the ground, it goes down a drain, something like this. Major spills, we need to report them to the Ministry of Environment, and in a lot of cases, the Ministry of Environment will direct us on how to clean up that spill. For minor spills though, generally we can clean them up ourselves. So we have spill kits and other materials, Absorball, shovels, brooms in all of our facilities. This is what we use to control these spills. We make every attempt to ensure the spilled material is contained inside the facility or on pavement, on concrete. We just want to make sure that it doesn't go down a drain, it doesn't get soaked into the ground or anything like that. As long as we can do that, generally we can clean up these spills fairly effectively. After the spill is controlled, clean up the spilled material and any Absorball or other materials that you've used to control the spread. All material must be cleaned up completely and disposed of in the proper manner. And a lot of times this might go back to looking up the SDS sheet for Absorball or the SDS sheet maybe of the chemical that was spilled. And that will direct you as to how to properly dispose of the spilled material. All spills need to be reported. This means that you need to let your supervisor know about the spill no matter how big the spill is. and then they can contact the appropriate authorities. And as I mentioned, if it's a major spill, it's got to go to the Ministry of Environment. We'll also probably fill out an incident report form documenting what happened, how the spill occurred, and the procedures that we followed in order to clean it up. Your supervisor will notify our environmental health and safety manager, who will let the environmental ministry know about our spill. And in this case, the ministry may come in and they may say, no, you need to follow these protocols because the spill did have an adverse effect on the environment. So this is why it's really important that we make sure that we clean up our spills effectively, that we have proper and quick response to spills, because we don't want to be creating any of these adverse effects. Okay, we'll talk about asbestos. So the management of asbestos waste falls under Section 17 of Regulation 347. And these are strict guidelines designed to protect workers, the public, and the environment to ensure all asbestos waste is handled in a safe manner. Miller Waste Systems does not collect asbestos waste from either curbside or from our regular pickup points, and no transfer station or facility that we operate is permitted to accept or process asbestos waste. So asbestos waste is not allowed to be dumped at any of our facilities. If you think that something that is being dumped contains asbestos, notify your supervisor immediately. You can check out our asbestos identification and control plan. It is part of your training booklet for more information regarding how to tell what types of waste could have asbestos and what to do if you ever suspect that asbestos is part of the waste in an incoming or an already tipped load. Under some circumstances, a Miller Waste driver may be asked to transport asbestos from a generation site, but it would go directly to a landfill, not a site that we operate. So in this case, the driver would receive special training, but again, our facilities do not receive, we cannot have asbestos at any of our sites. So you might be asking, what exactly is asbestos and how can I tell what is asbestos? Well, it is hard to tell oftentimes. Asbestos generally is in building supplies, and it's in building supplies from many, many years ago, like in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, like a long time ago, they put asbestos in a lot of building supplies. So if asbestos is going to be transported, it needs to be put into containers. So there are companies that actually do what's called asbestos abatement. So when they tear asbestos out of old buildings, they would put it inside a container of sufficient strength to accommodate the weight and the nature of the waste, or sometimes it would be put into really big containers, and that's where our trucks would maybe haul them around. So if it's being transported by a truck in bulk, it needs to be transported by means of a waste management system that is subject to an ECA that specifically authorizes the transportation of asbestos waste in bulk. And as I mentioned, companies are doing this type of work. Miller, in most cases, does not do any type of transportation of asbestos waste. Asbestos is dangerous to humans when it becomes airborne. So if it is being transported or being handled, all precautions have to be taken to prevent it from becoming airborne. And asbestos becomes airborne when it's broken. So these abatement companies that I talked about, they specialize in handling asbestos. And one of the things that they do is they use what are called wetting agents to prevent this asbestos dust from spreading around. So if we're transporting asbestos, we need to have that wetting agent. We need to have shovels and brooms and a supply of bags and respiratory equipment to protect the worker, just in case something were to happen, just in case the asbestos were to become airborne. So when asbestos is being transported, when it's being unloaded, there's measures and procedures that are put in place. And again, facilities that are designed to handle asbestos and companies that that do asbestos abatement and asbestos transport, they would have all of these procedures in place to make sure that if the asbestos does become airborne, gets out of one of these containers, it can be rebagged. These are the things that the Environmental Protection Act and Regulation 347, these are the measures and procedures that are put in place when it comes to the handling of asbestos. Every person that handles asbestos or supervises the loading of asbestos needs to wear the proper personal protective equipment while doing so. Protective clothing that has been in contact with asbestos needs to be disposed of. Most asbestos protective clothing is disposable. It's one-time use. You use it once and then you throw it away. So if you suspect that we have asbestos that's being brought into our facility, like let's say it looks like there's something that's been put in a container, it's marked asbestos or anything like that, maybe somebody's bringing it in and they don't realize it's asbestos, don't disturb it, because again, disturbing the asbestos is when it becomes dangerous. Contact your supervisor immediately and wait for instructions on what to do next. All right, you've been trained. So what is next? Well, you're going to prove it. And you're going to prove that you've been trained by working safely. It is your responsibility to follow the recommendations and requirements of this training program. Our policies and procedures, as well as the specific requirements of the environmental compliance approval document that's related to the facility you are working in. It's actually really easy to work safe and protect yourself, your coworkers, and the environment that you're working in. We've provided you with all the information you need to do so. If you do have any concerns, always remember that you can ask your supervisor for help with any issue that you may have. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can talk to your supervisor. We do have a quiz that we want you to do, so you will get that from your supervisor. Once you've completed the quiz, pass it back to them. Good luck, stay safe, and thank you for your attention.